The massive crystal chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as Ambassador Sarah Chen rose from her seat. The weight of 1,000 alien eyes pressed down on her shoulders, but her spine remained straight as steel. Around the circular amphitheater, representatives from 47 species watched with growing unease. Honorable delegates, Sarah's voice carried clearly through the translation matrix, reaching every corner of the vast hall. For 300 years, humanity has sat in these chambers. We have listened. We have compromised. We have bent our knee to your collective wisdom. The Zephyrian High Chancellor, a towering being of crystalline features and shifting colors, leaned forward in his elevated throne. Ambassador Chen, surely you do not mean to— I mean exactly what I'm about to say. Sarah's hand moved to the small device clipped to her collar, humanity's translation beacon. With a decisive click, she switched it off. The familiar hum that had bridged languages for centuries went silent. A ripple of shock ran through the assembly. The Terran delegation, all 12 of humanity's representatives, stood as one. Their translation beacons went dark in sequence, each click echoing like a gunshot in the crystal chamber. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded the Vorthon speaker, her tentacles writhing in agitation. But her words fell on deaf ears. The humans could no longer understand her, and she could no longer understand them. Sarah turned to face the assembly, one final time. When she spoke, it was in clear, unaccented English, a language that had been heard in these halls only during private human conversations for 3 centuries. For too long we have played by your rules. We have watched our colonies, burned, our people enslaved, our voices ignored in the name of galactic harmony. But harmony built on submission is not peace. It is tyranny dressed in pretty words. The alien delegates looked to their own translators in panic, but none had been programmed for raw human speech in decades. The meaning was lost, but the tone was unmistakable. Admiral Marcus Webb, the military liaison, stepped forward. His weathered face showed no emotion as he reached into his uniform jacket. Every security detail in the chamber tensed, hands moving to weapons. But Webb only withdrew. A small ornate box, he set it on the speaker's podium with reverent care. "This," Sarah continued in English, "contains the ashes of colony ship Meridian. 5,000 souls, including my daughter, burned to death when the hegemony decided our expansion threatened their mining rights. The Council's response? A formal censure. Not sanctions, not justice, a censure." She opened the box. The gray ash caught the chamber's artificial light. "You want to know what humanity learned in these 300 years of talks? We learned that you don't negotiate with those who see you as children. You don't reason with those who consider your lives expendable. You don't compromise with those who would rather see you extinct than equal." The human delegation began walking toward the chamber's exit in perfect formation. Their footsteps echoed in the stunned silence. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the chief science advisor, paused at the threshold. She looked back at the assembled delegates and spoke a single word in English that needed no translation. "Goodbye." The massive doors sealed behind them with a sound like the closing of a tomb. For several minutes, nobody moved. Then the Zephyrian High Chancellor activated his own translation matrix and spoke words that would echo through history. "What have we done?" But humanity was already gone, walking the corridors of the station toward their ships, toward their worlds, toward a future they would forge alone. In the docking bay, Sarah stopped before the sleek human vessels. The stars beyond the station's force field seemed to call to her. "Ma'am?" asked Captain Torres, the youngest member of their delegation. "What happens now?" Sarah looked out at the vast galaxy, a galaxy that had just learned humanity would know Longerbow. "Now, Captain, we remind them why our species conquered a death world and reached for the stars." She smiled, and it was not a gentle expression. "We remind them what happens when you corner a species that evolved from predators." The human ships powered up their engines. The blue-white fire of their drives painted the docking bay in stark light and shadow. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds and 10,000 ships, humanity received the same message. "The talks are over. We stand alone. Prepare for what comes next." Chapter 2. The Silence Spreads. 3 days after humanity walked out of the Galactic Council, the first signs of change rippled across known space. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, human foreman, Jake Morrison was supervising the extraction of rare earth minerals when his hegemony overseer, Thax, approached with what passed for concern on his beetle-like features. Morrison human. Thax clicked in the trade pigeon they used to communicate. Your people ships departed from orbital station. Replacement humans coming when? Jake straightened up from the processing unit he'd been calibrating. Around them, the massive open pit mine stretched for kilometers, a wound in the planet's surface that human labor had carved over the past 50 years. No replacements coming, Thax. Jake's voice was steady, but something had changed in his posture. Contracts. Terminated. Terminated? No possible. Humans have obligation debt to hegemony for protection service. Jake pulled out a small data pad and showed Thax the screen. The official seal of Terra Prime glowed at the top of the document. Says here all human labor contracts are void as of yesterday. We're no longer bound by the Council's arbitration agreements. Jake's smile was thin. Guess that means we're free to renegotiate our terms. Thax's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. Cannot be. Council law supersedes local. Council law assumes council membership. Jake interrupted, his voice gaining an edge that Thax had never heard before. We're not members anymore, are we? Across the mining complex, the sound of machinery grinding to a halt echoed through the dusty air. Human workers, engineers, technicians, heavy equipment operators were stepping away from their posts. You cannot do this. Thax's translator struggled with his increasingly rapid clicks. Without humans, production stops. Our quotas. Your quotas are your problem now. Jake began walking toward the shuttle pad where other human workers were gathering. Maybe next time you'll think twice before treating sapient beings like indentured servants. Where do you go? Thax followed, his clawed feet scrabbling on the rocky ground. Jake paused at the bottom of the shuttle ramp. Home. To prepare. Prepare for what? For the consequences of 300 years of your people's choices. As the shuttle lifted off, Thax stood alone among the silent machines, finally understanding that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy's balance of power. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the Zephyrian research vessel, Crystal Harmony, was experiencing its own moment of revelation. Dr. Yarix floated in the ship's zero-gravity laboratory, his crystalline body pulsing with frustrated bioluminescence. Before him, the quantum resonance chamber that had taken his team 15 years to perfect sat dark and useless. Status report. He communicated through harmonic frequencies to his assistant. The human equations are incomplete, came the response. Without Dr. Vasquez's theoretical framework, we cannot make the final calculations work. Yarix's light pattern shifted to deep red, the Zephyrian equivalent of a curse. Contact the Human Science Exchange. Request immediate consultation. I have tried, Doctor. The exchange no longer responds to our frequencies. All human academic institutions have severed communications with council member species. The implications hit Yarix like a solar flare. Humanity hadn't just left the political arena. They had withdrawn their entire intellectual contribution. 3 centuries of joint research, shared discoveries, collaborative breakthroughs, all of it now beyond reach. Show me the data on human-assisted projects currently in progress across council space, Yarix ordered. The holographic display that materialized around him was staggering. 30% of all advanced research in the galaxy relied on human theoretical contributions. 40% of major engineering projects used human-designed components. 60% of interstellar navigation systems ran on human-developed algorithms. They were never just participants, Yarix whispered, his light fading to a pale blue of realization. They were the foundation. On the bridge of the exploration vessel, Far Wanderer, Captain Keth of the Alteran Collective was discovering the same terrible truth. Navigation, plot a course for the Nebula sector, he ordered. Unable to comply, Captain, his navigator replied. confusion evident in the trill of his voice. The star charts for that region were compiled using human deep space sensors. Without access to their updated data, we're flying blind. Keth's forearms moved in a gesture of disbelief. What about our own sensor arrays? Inferior by several orders of magnitude, sir. We've relied on human space mapping for centuries. The captain looked out at the star field ahead. Suddenly, the familiar galaxy seemed vast and unknowable. Again, its safe passages and hidden dangers locked away behind human silence. How many ships are experiencing similar difficulties? Preliminary reports suggest all of them, sir. Any vessel that regularly travels beyond their home system's immediate vicinity is affected. As the reality of their situation sank in, Keth understood that humanity hadn't just withdrawn from politics. They had withdrawn the very knowledge that kept galactic civilization functioning. And somewhere in human space, Sarah Chen sat in her private office aboard the diplomatic vessel, New Horizon, reading similar reports from across the galaxy. Each data stream painted the same picture. Without human participation, the carefully balanced mechanisms of galactic society were beginning to seize up like a machine deprived of its most essential parts. Her aide, Lieutenant Commander Park, knocked and entered without waiting for permission, a breach of protocol that spoke to the urgency of the moment. Ma'am, we're receiving thousands of communication requests. The Council, the Hegemony, the Collective, the Trade Federation, everyone wants to talk. I'm sure they do. Sarah's voice was calm, but her eyes held the cold light of stars. What's our response? Standard diplomatic courtesy suggests we should at least acknowledge. Lieutenant Commander Park, Sarah interrupted gently. Do you know what my daughter's last message to me was? Park fell silent. She said, Mom, don't let them make this meaningless. Sarah stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the streaming stars. The time for diplomatic courtesy ended when they burned her ship. So we say nothing. We say nothing. We do nothing. We wait. Wait for what? Sarah's reflection in the viewport smiled, and it was a predator's expression. For them to realize they need us more than we need them. Chapter 3. The Reckoning. 2 weeks after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy began to crack. The first cascade, failure occurred in the Vorthan commercial sector, where a routine cargo transfer between two massive freight haulers went catastrophically wrong. Without human-designed safety protocols, a simple docking maneuver became a collision that claimed 300 lives and destroyed supplies bound for 17 worlds. Within hours, similar accidents were reported across known space. Jump calculations failing, life support systems malfunctioning, communication arrays falling silent. The technological foundation of galactic civilization, built on 3 centuries of human innovation, was crumbling. In the emergency session of the Galactic Council, chaos reigned. Order! Order! The Zephyrian High Chancellor's harmonic voice cut through the cacophony of alien languages. The chair recognizes the hegemony speaker. Kralthon, the massive insectoid leader of the hegemony, rose on his hind legs. His translator struggled to keep pace with his rapid, clicking speech. Honored delegates, the situation is catastrophic. Our mining operations have ceased. Our trade routes are compromised. Our research projects are stalled. The humans have crippled us with their departure. Then perhaps, interrupted the Altaran representative, her forearms gesturing wildly, we should have listened when they spoke of justice for the Meridian colony. A chorus of objections erupted from the hegemony delegation. The Meridian incident was unfortunate but necessary. Kralthon's mandibles clacked aggressively. Human expansion threatened our territorial integrity. 5,000 civilians. The Altaran's voice rose to a dangerous pitch. Including children, you burned them, alive for the crime of building a farming colony. High Chancellor Zix Prime raised his crystalline hand for silence. The past cannot be changed. We must focus on the present crisis. Has anyone succeeded in establishing communication with human leadership? The silence that followed was answer. Enough. Finally, the Trade Federation's representative, a floating jellyfish-like being named Wool, spoke through his bioluminescent display. All human frequencies are dark. Their diplomatic stations respond only with automated messages stating that humanity no longer recognizes council authority. What of their colonial worlds? Asked the collective's delegate. Unreachable. Human. Space has become opaque. Their stealth technology exceeds our ability to penetrate. High Chancellor Zix Prime's light patterns shifted to deep blue, the Zephyrian expression of profound concern. Then we must consider alternatives. Perhaps a direct approach to Earth itself? Inadvisable. Wool's display flickered nervously. Human home system is heavily fortified. Any uninvited approach would be considered an act of war. War? Kralthon's laugh was like breaking glass. They are one species among 47. What threat could they possibly? His words were cut off by an urgent chime. A communication technician rushed to the chamber's center, his small scurrying form trembling with excitement. Honorable delegates, we're receiving a transmission from human space. Every being in the chamber focused on the holographic display that materialized above them. The image resolved into the familiar face of Ambassador Sarah Chen, but she looked different. Gone was the diplomatic composure, the careful deference that had marked her centuries of service. What remained was something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. Greetings, former colleagues, Sarah's voice echoed through the translation matrix. I trust you're enjoying the new state of galactic affairs. High Chancellor Zix Prime leaned forward. Ambassador Chen, surely we can resolve this misunderstanding through proper diplomatic channels. There are no diplomatic channels, Sarah interrupted. Diplomacy requires mutual respect. You have shown us that such respect does not exist. But the disruption to galactic commerce, began the Trade Federation representative, is your problem? Sarah's smile was winter cold. For 300 years, we provided the intellectual foundation for your civilization. We designed your safety systems, mapped your star charts, developed your technologies. We asked for so little in return, merely to be treated as equals, to have our legitimate grievances heard, to see justice when our people were murdered. The Meridian incident, Kralthon started, was genocide. Sarah's voice cut like a blade. 5,000 civilians burned alive because their farming colony might someday compete with your mining interests. And what did this august body do? You censured us for aggressive expansion. She stood, and even through the hologram, her presence seemed to fill the chamber. But perhaps you've learned something in these past 2 weeks. Perhaps you've realized that the galaxy doesn't function without human contribution. Your ships crash, your research stalls, your trade collapses. Because for 3 centuries, we were the ones holding your civilization together. What do you want? The question came from High Chancellor Zix Prime, and his light patterns showed the rainbow of desperation. Sarah's smile grew wider. Now that's the first intelligent question I've heard from this body in decades. She reached off screen and retrieved a data tablet. Humanity's terms for returning to galactic society are simple. First, full reparations for the Meridian colony, not just financial, but the perpetrators tried for genocide under human law. Second, territorial sovereignty for all human colonies, with no interference from council species. Third, equal representation in all council decisions, with human veto power over any resolution affecting human interests. The chamber erupted, in outrage. Kralthon's clicking rose to a shriek. Impossible! You ask for dominion over the entire galaxy. We ask for what we've earned, Sarah replied calmly. 3 centuries of contribution. 3 centuries of being the foundation you built your civilization on. We're not asking to rule you. We're demanding that you never again treat us as children to be managed. And if we refuse? Asked Wool, his bioluminescence flickering with fear. Sarah's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Something that reminded every watching alien why humans had evolved as apex predators. Then you'll discover what happens when humanity stops playing by your rules and starts playing by our own. The transmission cut out, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. High Chancellor Zix Prime's light patterns cycled through the full spectrum of Zephyrian emotion before settling on a pale, defeated white. "How long," he asked quietly, "before our civilizations begin to collapse entirely?" The Trade Federation's analysis was swift and devastating. At current rates of cascade failure, 6 months, perhaps less. For the first time in galactic history, the Council faced a truth they had never imagined. They needed humanity far more than humanity needed them. And in the depths of human space, Sarah Chen looked out at the stars and smiled. The hunted had become the hunter. The students had become the teachers. Now it was time for the galaxy to learn what humanity had always known. Respect is not given freely. It is earned through strength, demanded through necessity, and maintained through the credible threat of consequences. The real negotiations were about to begin. Chapter 4. The Price of Pride. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the battleship, Defiance, watching the sensor displays with grim satisfaction. Around Earth, humanity's home fleet maintained its protective formation. 300 vessels of war that represented the culmination of centuries of technological development hidden from galactic oversight. "Admiral," reported Captain Hayes. "From the communication station, long-range sensors are detecting multiple fleet movements throughout Council space. The hegemony is mobilizing their battle groups." Webb's weathered face showed no surprise. "Expected timeline for hostile action? Intelligence suggests they're still 3 weeks from full deployment." "But sir," Hayes hesitated, "their combined fleet numbers in the thousands, even with our technological advantages." "Captain, how long have you served with the human fleet?" 15 years, sir." "Then you know the first rule of human military doctrine?" Hayes straightened. "Never fight fair, sir." "Exactly." Webb turned to the tactical display, where red icons represented the approaching alien fleets. "Send word to Prometheus Station. It's time to activate the Lazarus protocols." In the depths of the Jupiter system, hidden within the swirling storms of the gas giant's atmosphere, Prometheus Station received Webb's signal. Dr. Elena Vasquez, humanity's chief science advisor, stood in the station's central laboratory, surrounded by the most closely guarded secrets in human space. "Elena," came Webb's voice through the secure channel, "we need to show them what we've been preparing for." Dr. Vasquez looked at the cylindrical device before her, no larger than a briefcase, but containing technology that would revolutionize warfare. "Are you certain, Marcus? Once we reveal this, there's no going back." They made that choice when they decided to solve their problems with force instead of negotiation. Elena activated the device. Across human space, similar stations received the signal and began their own activations. The Lazarus Project, humanity's secret weapon developed over decades of hidden research, was finally coming online. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chambers, the atmosphere had grown toxic with recrimination and fear. "This is madness." The Altaran delegates' forearms gestured frantically. "You're talking about attacking the species that built half our technology." Kralthon of the hegemony remained unmoved. "They are a single species. We are 46 united civilizations. Mathematics alone ensures our victory." "Mathematics?" The collective's representative trilled with bitter laughter. "Mathematics also said their farms on Kepler 442b couldn't possibly threaten your mining profits, yet you still burned the Meridian colony to ash." High Chancellor Zix Prime raised his crystalline hand for order, but his light patterns showed deep uncertainty. "Perhaps we should reconsider Ambassador Chen's terms." "Never!" Kralthon's mandibles clacked violently. "We do not negotiate with terrorists. The humans will return to their proper place in galactic society, or they will be forced to do so." What none of them realized was that humanity had been listening to every word. Deep in human space, Sarah Chen sat in the intelligence center of Terra Prime, watching the intercepted communications with something approaching pity. "They still don't understand," she murmured to her aide, Lieutenant Commander Park. 300 years of partnership, and they learned nothing about who we really are. "Ma'am, Admiral Webb is requesting permission to begin Phase 2. Sarah nodded slowly. Granted. Signal all human colonies and outposts. Operation Exodus begins now. Across the galaxy, on 47 worlds where humans lived and worked, the same scene played out with clockwork precision. Human families gathered, their possessions and boarded transport ships. Human workers abandoned their posts and headed for evacuation points. Human researchers destroyed their notes and wiped their computers. Within hours, every human presence in council space had vanished as if they had never existed at all. On the mining world where Jake Morrison had confronted his hegemony overseer, Thaxa stood among the silent machinery and screamed his rage at the empty sky. The humans had taken more than just their labor. They had taken the technical knowledge needed to maintain the equipment. Without human expertise, the massive mining operation would grind to a halt within days. The same pattern repeated on 1,000 worlds. Food production systems failed without human agricultural techniques. Medical facilities shut down without human biological research. Transportation networks collapsed without human engineering support. But the galaxy's leaders were too proud to see the writing on the wall. "Let them run," Kralthon declared in an emergency council session. "We survived before humanity reached the stars. We will survive after they retreat to their primitive worlds." It was then that the first reports began arriving. "High Chancellor," a trembling technician reported. "We're receiving distress signals from the outer rim. The Vegan colony, it's gone." The chamber fell silent. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "The entire star system, sir. Where Vega should be. There's nothing. Empty space." Before anyone could process this information, more reports flooded in. The Centauri cluster vanished. The Wolf system empty. Capella, Aldebaran, Arcturus. Entire star systems were disappearing from the galactic map. High Chancellor Zix Prime's light patterns cycled through every color of terror. Are the humans destroying entire star systems?" The answer came in the form of a new transmission from Sarah Chen, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood Admiral Webb and Dr. Vasquez along with dozens of other human leaders. "Greetings, Council." Sarah's voice carried the weight of finality. "By now you've noticed some changes to the galactic map. What have you done?" Zix Prime's harmonic voice cracked with strain. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. "We've activated humanity's greatest achievement, dimensional fold technology. Those star systems haven't been destroyed. They've been relocated to a parallel dimensional space, safe from interference." "Impossible!" Kralthon shrieked. "No species possesses such technology." "No council species," Admiral Webb corrected. "But then, we were never really council material, were we? Too primitive, too aggressive, too unpredictable." Sarah smiled that cold predator's smile. "Every human colony, every human world, every human station has been moved beyond your reach. 40 million humans, completely independent of galactic civilization. But the economic disruption alone will," began the Trade Federation representative. "Will teach you the value of partnership over domination," Sarah finished. "Your choice is simple now. Accept our terms for re-entering galactic society, or learn to function without human contribution entirely. We have our fleets mobilizing." Kralthon's desperation was showing. "Even if you've hidden your civilians, your military forces are still vulnerable." Webb's laugh was like grinding stone. "Is that what you think? Elena, show them what they're really facing." Dr. Vasquez activated a holographic display. It showed the approaching council fleets. Thousands of ships arranged in battle formation. But surrounding them, invisible until now, were smaller contacts. "Gentlemen, ladies, and other distinguished beings," Webb said formally, "allow me to introduce you to humanity's actual military assets. Not the few hundred ships you've observed around Earth, but the 30,000 vessels we've been building in dimensional fold space for the past century." The display zoomed in, showing sleek, predatory ships that moved with impossible speed and agility. Their weapons were unlike anything in the Council's arsenal. beams of coherent energy that could slice through battleship armor like paper. Stealth technology based on dimensional manipulation, weapons that exploit quantum uncertainty principles, defensive systems that exist partially outside normal space-time. Webb's voice was clinical, professional. Did you really think a species that conquered a death world and reached the stars in less than 1,000 years would be defenseless? The silence in the council chamber was absolute. Sarah stepped forward one final time. This is your last chance. Accept our terms, acknowledge humanity as an equal partner in galactic civilization, and we can build something better together. Refuse and learn what happens when predators stop pretending to be prey. She leaned closer to the camera and her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The galaxy is about to discover why, in all of human literature, the scariest words are, "Not here be monsters, they're here be humans." The transmission ended, leaving the council to contemplate a universe where they were no longer the apex species, and in dimensional fold space, humanity waited to see if the galaxy would choose wisdom or war. Epilogue. The New Balance 1 year. Later, Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the rebuilt corridors of the Galactic Council station. But these weren't the same crystal chambers where she had once begged for justice. This was New Geneva Station, constructed in the neutral zone between normal space and humanity's dimensional fold territories. The architecture itself told the story of change. Human geometric efficiency blended with alien aesthetic traditions. Zephyrian crystal grew alongside human steel. Altaran flowing curves complemented hegemony angular precision. It was what the galaxy could be when species worked as equals rather than supplicants and masters. The Vorthan delegation has arrived, reported Captain Torres. No longer the youngest member of humanity's diplomatic corps, but now Sarah's chief aide. They're ready to sign the agricultural exchange agreement. Sarah nodded, reviewing the tablet in her hands. In the past year, 23 of the galaxy's 46 species had signed new partnership agreements with humanity. Not treaties of submission or dominance, but genuine accords between equals. The holdouts, primarily the hegemony and their closest allies, had learned the hard way that galactic civilization couldn't function without human participation. Their choice had been simple: adapt to the new reality or watch their empires crumble into irrelevance. Most had chosen adaptation. And the hegemony? Sarah asked. Torres smiled grimly. Kralthon was voted out of leadership last month. Their new speaker, Velthon, has requested a meeting to discuss mutual understanding. Interesting euphemism for surrender. Indeed. Though I suspect they'll frame it as strategic partnership realignment. Sarah laughed, a sound that would have been impossible during her centuries of frustration in the old council chambers. Let them save face if they want. Pride is a luxury we can afford to grant now that respect is no longer negotiable. They reached the main conference hall, where the latest session of what was now called the Galactic Assembly was preparing to begin. No longer was it a hierarchy with some species holding dominion over others. Each civilization had one vote, one voice, one opportunity to be heard. As Sarah took her seat, no longer at a supplicant's desk, but at a round table where all positions were equal, she caught sight of a memorial wall that had been installed at the chamber's entrance. On it were inscribed the names of the 5,000 humans who had died aboard the colony ship Meridian. Her daughter's name, Emma Chen Morrison, was among them. They died for this, she whispered to herself. For the moment when humanity stopped asking for respect and started demanding it, High Chancellor Zix Prime, still the ceremonial leader of the assembly but no longer its absolute authority, called the session to order. Today's agenda includes the proposal for joint exploration of the Magellanic Clouds, the establishment of new trade routes through dimensional fold space, and he paused, his light patterns showing what might have been pride, the formal celebration of humanity's achievements in theoretical physics. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now Director of Galactic Scientific Cooperation, stood to address the assembly. Distinguished colleagues, I'm pleased to announce that our research teams have successfully developed stable wormhole technology. For the first time in galactic history, Instantaneous travel between distant star systems is possible. The implications rippled through the chamber. What had once taken months of hyperspace travel could now be accomplished in minutes. Of course, Vasquez continued with a slight smile. This technology requires cooperation between human dimensional fold theory and Zephyrian crystal matrix engineering. No single species could have achieved this alone. It was a gentle reminder that the new galaxy required partnership, not domination. As the session progressed, Sarah found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. From the moment she had stood and switched off her translation beacon, to this day when human voices carried equal weight in galactic affairs, it had been a transformation born of necessity and forged in the crucible of confrontation. The galaxy had learned what humanity had always known. Respect is not given freely. It is earned through competence, demanded through strength, and maintained through the willingness to stand alone if necessary. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned what humans could achieve when treated as partners rather than subjects. After the session, Sarah walked to the station's observation deck. Through the transparent aluminum, she could see the swirling interface between normal space and dimensional fold territory. Ships from dozens of species moved freely between both realms, carrying trade goods, scientific data, and cultural exchanges. Captain Torres joined her at the viewing portal. "Regrets?" he asked. Sarah considered the question. 300 years of diplomacy, compromise, and patient suffering had ended in 2 weeks of crisis that reshaped galactic civilization. "None," she said finally. "Sometimes the only way to build something better is to be willing to tear down what came before. And if they hadn't accepted our terms?" Sarah's reflection in the transparent aluminum smiled with the memory of predators who had learned to hunt among the stars. Then the galaxy would have learned what happens when humanity stops being diplomatic and starts being human. In the distance, a human exploration vessel emerged from dimensional fold space, its hull scarred from the journey through uncharted regions of space-time. Behind it came a Zephyrian research ship and an Alteran cultural exchange vessel, 3 species working together to push the boundaries of what was possible. The galaxy watched with wonder instead of dread as humanity stood not to leave, but to lead the way toward a future that none of them could achieve alone. And in the memorial wall of New Geneva Station, the names of 5,000 humans served as an eternal reminder that some prices are too high to pay, some injustices too great to ignore, and some species too dangerous to corner. The talks were over. The real conversation had finally begun. End of. The galaxy watched in dread as humanity stood and left the talks.